Hi, my name is Dave Roberts and I'm head of the Wrongfully Convicted Association. This one is about my buddy, the Crown Attorney Andrew Berzins, that I was protesting and everything else, and I've been charged, all kinds of things. But this is just about Andrew and his corruption. He used to be the top Crown Attorney in Ottawa, and he's a crook. There's a biblical verse, and I just, kind of like to talk to Andrew at the same time, because I know he's going to watch this. And it says, lawyers are greedy, wicked, hypocrites, and fools. It comes from the Bible. It's about the 7 woes to lawyers. It says, woe to lawyers that cause great burdens and carry no weight, for you weigh men down with burdens hard to bear and won't lift a finger. For years on February 15th, these charges were dropped and the police covered it up. Matter of fact, they're still trying to cover it up. I just had another investigation by Vern White, and Vern agrees with the 3 police complaints that there's no proof that I had court February 15th, and here's the transcript. Now, what happened is about Andrew Berzins is, and I'd like to say, Andrew, did you like the video about your wife? That's a good one. Andrew and his buddies fixed a trial against me. What they did was, January 3rd, 1995, they turned around and said I was charged with 3 counts of printed defamatory statements knowing they were false. And then they turned around and dropped the charges on February 15th. But what they did was they withheld, on the 15th too, I was beaten and tortured by a bunch of cops that were friends of his in the basement of the courthouse. They worked at the courthouse, and he was like the chief Crown Attorney at the time in Ottawa. So they withheld that information and kept saying they didn't have it. But the thing about Andrew Berzins is, on that day, I went to court and I went to go to the washroom, and then I came back and I was followed by a cop by the name of Roy Burton. He wasn't following, but he was a head security, and I went by and he knew me, and he turned around and he got a security guard to cop there to follow me into the courtroom. And as you see by the February 15th transcripts, you'll see that they surrounded me, and that's who I was telling on. Well, I later went up and seen the top Crown Attorney in Eastern Ontario, buddy of Andrew Berzins, Peter Griffiths, now a Ottawa judge. He's corrupt as hell. And I turned around and then I went down, and then they set up the security. So the security was following because I wanted a piece of paper from Peter Griffiths' secretary saying that I made an appointment, but she wouldn't give me, so they called them up the security and they followed me around. I was happy about it because I knew I was just going to get a report from the security that would show that I was in there getting an appointment. So what I did was I went down to the court clerk's office and a court reporter's office, and I ordered the February 15th transcript because I always order them, and then I went down to court security, court thing, and court security were following me. I went down to the Crown Attorney's office, and I asked who Peter Griffiths' boss was. At that time, over the radio, the cop was always talking. About 20 minutes went by since the 2 police officers made contact with me in the regional director of Crown Attorney's office. And so a cop by the name Roy Burton had radioed on over the phone, cover him like a blanket, we know who he is, and all this. So they knew who I was, and Roy, like I said, I ran into Roy Burton, and he used to date my wife's lawyer, who was protesting, who wouldn't show up in court. So I ended up that, and I had the charges dropped on February 15th, these April 3rd charges, and what happened is I had a condition before not to go into the courthouse unless for a scheduled court period, and I also had a condition to stay away from Andrew Berzins. So what happened is when I was at the court reporter's office and that, they called Roy Burton, that was down in the basin, head of security at the time, who was dating my wife's lawyer. He turned around and called Andrew Berzins, because he wanted to know, he knew I had court because he had followed me, and he knew that I didn't have any conditions anymore. And so he called Andrew Berzins on what to do. Now Andrew Berzins said that he wasn't supposed to be handling any of the cases if there was charges on me. But he got involved in this case, because he knew, like he said in 2000, I was told by the Crown Attorney's, the Regional Director of Crown Attorneys, Peter Griffiths, his friend, that the charges were going to be dropped beforehand, before February 15th. So he knew there. Plus, when the cop called him and talked to him, the cop wrote a statement saying Andrew Berzins told him to give him a trespassing notice. A notice is the first step when you don't have a condition to go to stay out of the courtroom. If I would have had that condition, they would have charged me. Like right off the hop, he wouldn't have had to call him. But he knew the charges were, I had court, the charges were dropped, the cop. So he called Andrew, and Andrew told him, give him a trespassing notice. This is what the cop says in the statement. Why do you give two conditions to stay out of the courthouse unless you know one's already gone? Okay? Give another one unless one's already gone. So what happened is he turned around and this caught him again. He knew. And then the next day on February 16th, I had the same judge, and it came out that I had court again. And the Crown Attorney went and seen Andrew Berzins again. And Andrew Berzins got involved in this case again, showing that, and this shows again that he knew that the charges were dropped because we talked about it in the courtroom. So by the time the Crown Attorney seen him, he already knew, so he's told him again. But Andrew Berzins was involved again, only to show in what to do with me, only to show that he was not breaking any guidelines, but if I would have had these charges still against me, he would have been breaking the guidelines, and he knew this not, because he already told that Peter Griffiths that he couldn't handle this case because of the guidelines. So what happened is all the way through, they kept saying I never had court. Just watch the time. They never had court. And so what they did was they covered up for years and years and years that I never had court. And I was found mentally insane at the time of the crime. And what happened is they say I broke a condition to stay away from Andrew Berzins too, because I protested them later because they kept covering up the fact that I never had court. I kept going before the judge and they'd say never had court, never had court. So Andrew Berzins and his buddies were things. So then I went and seen another one of Andrew Berzins' buddies. They said, "You want to see a doctor?" And the judge on February 16th told her, from 15th and 16th, told her, all you got to do is pick up the phone and call the court clerk's office, and you'll find he had court. But I was a judge, and he had court. And she says, the cops have made a mistake, and this is right in front of Crown Attorney Andrew Berzins' people. And this is the guy that went and seen the Crown Attorney Andrew Berzins on the 16th. So Andrew Berzins has been known all along, and plus I've been selling it in the perjury in the newspaper and everything else. So I went and seen this Dr. John Bradford, a buddy of Andrew Berzins. I found this out later. And what happened is he turned around and he says that they withheld the fact that I had February 15th court, and that they said I had all these charges. But Peter Griffiths, the Crown Attorney, he did a bail hearing on May of 1995. Then after I was charged with breaking the condition to stay away from Andrew Berzins, and he withdrew it. But what happened is they sent the February 15th charges of breaking the condition of being in the courthouse, and the February and the May condition of that I broke. They said I broke that I didn't have of staying away from Andrew Berzins, and sent it up to the doctors. But what they withheld the fact that I had court and the charges had been dropped. That's what they did. So when they sent plus they fabricated evidence of drug charges, and I was on probation, and all these other type of things. And they sent it up to the doctor. So when I got to the doctor, I got a 10-minute or 20-minute thing, and I just told him, listen, the easiest way to do this, what's the time?
9.
So the easiest way to do this is just phone the court clerk's office, and ask them. You'll see all these cops are lying in this. But he never did, and then when he found out, he said I was insane at the time of the crime, like paranoid delusions. So what happened is a week later he found out, we gave him copies of the things showing that the police lied, and they had withheld the information. Now they had picked my lawyers in that, Andrew Berzins' office, and had picked my lawyers. And none of these people, to this day, they're all saying, at least the Police Complaint Commission and the Ottawa Police and the Crown Attorneys that prosecuted me, that I never had court that day. But a couple of years later, I guess it's time now.
Getting there.
Okay, stop it.